25 this morning. Not as cold as to our neighbors to the north, but it is frigid. With my stove roaring, trying to keep this house warm. Doing a good job at that. But my wood pile, I got to bring my wood in to thaw out. The wind packed my pile full of snow. So whatever. Quite the winter wonderland. Feels real good actually to get this dump of snow, and this cold feels natural. This will fill up the creeks and the streams and the lakes and the rivers. Got to plug this truck in. Come on, baby. Whoa. That's probably not going to start. Oh, she goes. The old Chevy's Duramax starts regardless what you throw at it. Any rate, cold start to the day. All the tractors we put inside, so there won't be any fight with that. Trying to haul some grain. Trying to get some bookkeeping done. I gotta pay my yard rent. My deadline is before Christmas Eve, so I gotta get around. And it takes a while. Celebrate with some Christmas cheer. I haven't seen my babies for a while. I think I'm just going to try to stay out of that shed for a bit. But I betcha those vents are frosted up. That fan's on idle. That means a bare minimum air exchange through the shed today. No doubt. Bare minimum air exchange. Let me warm my face up before my face falls off. That is a cold one out there today. That's the one I want. Let me walk the aisles here and just let you know what I'm thinking. Ooh, it's getting cool in here. It's only 1 degree. I'm just going to turn down the idle of that fan. My ceiling fans are too fast. What I want to do is make this a nice, calm, consistent wintering environment. So I don't want to make it windy throughout the depths of winter here. Let's turn that down. So I just want to be able to mix the air so that the carbon dioxide, the moisture, the whatever else, the cool, fresh air coming in as it goes across the room churns as it's pulled back out. So simplicity at its best. Things look quite content, I would say. You can see just a little bit of the humidity on the outside of the cluster there in the bottom board. A little bit of drop. I had carry sweep on Friday. Just continual drop, so I'll just sweep ahead of me. Forever accumulating. I have 2 box fans going. That seemed to help me last year. So again, simplicity at its best. So I'll just provide a little bit of narrative of my thought process right now. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get this done this winter because life is just stacking work onto my shoulders, and right now is the best time to treat these colonies for mites. because they will be practically absolutely broodless. End of December. And if they're going to start winter brooding, typically it's going to be end of January into February if they have just that little small patch of brood going on. So now is the time I should be targeting these bees for varroa mite. The opportunity is here, all in one building, all together, in a controlled environment, broodless, so we leave those varroa mites vulnerable. Or the most effective way to treat with oxalic acid vapor would be right now, because we are managing some of those variables out of the equation. The only problem is I don't want to die. Oxalic acid is extremely volatile. It's terrible for our health. And to be confined in a building, treating for 2, 3, maybe 4 days, trying to get the application done, is a huge hazard to my health or my employees' health. And I'm not so keen on that. So what to do, how to manage that? So oxalic acid is, in a way, like, it's not really a vapor. Well, it is and it isn't. The vapor, I guess, is the small little bit of moisture that's being gassed off, and it sublimates. The oxalic sublimates in these little wee particles, and it's all those little particles that then land on the bees within the cluster, and those little particles are what acts against the varroa mite. My problem is when I do treat, I have all the gas escape, and we have that sublimated particle in the air. And outside is okay because the wind just blows it away or it just kind of dissipates, but in a shed it doesn't. So you'll have this fine residue of sublimation everywhere, and focused more so on the applicator too, because you just can't get away from it. Imagine doing like a minute per colony, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Let's say about 15 minutes, if things are going tickety-boo, standing here in a cloud of oxalic acid vapor dust. It's not too appealing to me. So how do I achieve the treatment of my colonies while protecting ourselves from the harm of the oxalic acid residue or the dust? One thing I could do is, simply put, take a stack of 12, lift it up, and bring it over to the corner and build some kind of a fume hood. So, you pick it up, pull it over, put it in this fume hood, and have that fume hood pulling the air up and out of the building, so that we can treat 12 colonies at a time. Be a pretty slow process, but this time of year, time is our asset. So it could be done very, very awkwardly because I have very little space in this shed. So that is one thing I might kind of play around with. If I only had or if I had a little bit more space, so I could pull out the stack and pull it back in without too much trouble, and just chip away at the treatment over a couple of weeks. And that would manage that oxalic acid problem, that residue problem, by pulling the gases up and then outside, so that all the extra, the waste, you're not in constant exposure of it. The other thing I've been playing around with, and I don't know if this just might be too cumbersome, is why move the stack to the fume hood? Why not bring the fume hood to the stack? To do that, just spitballing here, but I could build this frame, not an A-frame, but I guess like an upside U frame on rollers, to roll down the row of the hives and in a sense seal off, and then a fan up on top to pull the air up through the fume hood here, and then down across the row, and then out the vent fan. So that would allow me to treat these colonies without having to move them. So basically just building this fume hood on rollers that would just roll down the aisle, and then we just treat the colonies accordingly. And my thinking is the suction within the fume would take the escaped vapor up and then out, and then the exposure would be very minimal. So that's another thing I'm thinking about. But in the next little while, Christmas and New Year's and travel and blah, 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 I won't be able to get it done. So this might be just a little bit of brainstorming to get things prepared for maybe another year, or maybe I'll have a slow February. The other thing I want to do, which is also listed within that danger zone, is I'm extremely curious on how carbon dioxide negatively affects varroa mites. And the research is showing that these honeybees, they can tolerate up to 8% carbon dioxide within a room. The mites can't. Now this scares me a little bit, but I'm thinking if we could bring that, I'm not sure where that threshold is. There's a lot of cowboys out there experimenting with this and seeing results, and the trade of information is quite lucrative because it's speculative and can result into catastrophic loss or loss of life. Right? You walk into a shed, let's say one of my kids walks into the shed with a shed holding at 4 to 6 to 8% carbon dioxide, they'll be dead when they won't even know it. Or my colonies, you know, $500,000 worth of bees in here, and I gas them with CO2. It might not be a wise, without guidance, I don't know. It makes me a little bit nervous, but I'm thinking, you know, here and again, we have these bees within this shed in a controlled environment. The opportunity lingers as these mites are exposed because there's no brooding within these nests. So now is the perfect time to be able to target those mites. And instead of taking winter as our huge disadvantage up here, we need to start extracting some advantage to this. The situation is leading opportunity. So if I could just manage this shed, and I'm trying to think how to manage the shed with CO2 without bringing it in, pumping it in, you know. I'd have to seal off the air intakes. I'd have to seal off the doors. I'd have to make sure, and basically what my idea is just to have the bees themselves create the CO2 and increase that level up to lethal levels. And how long you can hold them at that, or how long it would take for it to get up to 40,000 parts per million, I'm not exactly sure. Because the other problem that leads is when we turn off the fans to be able to focus on an increased CO2 level, you're not releasing any of their other gases or any other products you want out of the shed at that same time. So one being heat, the other being moisture, carbon monoxide, you know. That's why we continually bring fresh air into these sheds, just to help manage those situations. So it'd have to be done in the dead of winter when it's cold outside, like it's going to be minus 30 here the next few days. So I won't have to worry about, you know, these fans are on bare minimum right now, so heat won't be the problem. Moisture might be, carbon monoxide might be, and maybe some other byproducts. My thought process is getting the better of me, I think. So if I get a chance here, I'm gonna lock the doors. I'm gonna contain this building so there is no way there could be anybody enter. I'm gonna set up sensors. I gotta get a better CO2 sensor. I'm gonna set up some cameras. And I'm just gonna dabble with that, experiment with it a little bit to see, first off, how high of a level of CO2 can I get these bees to artificially, to how much CO2 will they generate to be able to accumulate up to the levels, my threshold level is at 40,000. And then just how long do I want to keep it at that? Ballsy, ballsy. What's pushing the envelope right now is the concern of my colonies. You know, as they disappear from the bottom boards already. Because of inadequate mite treatment, I'm thinking. And if that's the case, we're gonna have to start resting on a whole bunch of other alternatives that aren't perfect, but together we'll just keep knocking them down. The luxury of a single or a double application kill-all treatment might be, I don't know, post-Apivar era.